ไม่เห็นเลยเลยเขาต้องใช้มาเล็ดหรือใช้มาสแตนอะไรเนี่ย
รักษาราชการแทนอธิการบดีจุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยรู้สึกสำนึกในพระมหากรุณาธิคุณล้นเกล้าล้นกระหม่อมหาที่สุดที่ได้ที่ใต้ฝ่าละอองพระบาททรงพระเมตตาเสด็จพระราชดำเนินมาทรงฟังปาฐกถาในรายการสารสัมพันธ์สื่อสันติวัฒนธรรมที่จุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยร่วมกับมูลนิธิสันติภาพนานาชาติจัดขึ้นเพื่อเฉลิมพระเกียรติพระบาทสมเด็จพระจุลจอมเกล้าเจ้าอยู่หัวในโอกาสวันพระบรมราชสมภพครบ150 ปีอีกวาระหนึ่งในวันนี้การแสดงปาฐกถาวันนี้เป็นครั้งที่ 8ในหัวข้อการวิวาทะด้วยศรัทธาในฐานะที่เป็นแนวทางสู่สันติภาพโดยดร.คารันสิงห์นักรัฐศาสตร์และนักอนุรักษ์สิ่งแวดล้อมบัดนี้ข้าพเจ้าขอพระราชทานพระราชานุญาตเบิกนายอูเว่โมราเวสกราบบังคมทูลรายงานและอาจารย์ทิตินันท์พงศ์สุทธิรักษ์ทำหน้าที่ผู้ดำเนินรายการด้วยเกล้าด้วยกระหม่อม
ขอพระราชทานกราบบังคมทูลทราบฝ่าละอองพระบาทข้าพระพุทธเจ้านายอุปโมรเวศประธานมูลนิธิสันติภาพนานาชาติและคณะผู้จัดการปาฐกถาโดยดร.คารันสิงห์ด้านของการสานสัมพันธ์สู่สันติวัฒนธรรมมีความยินดีเป็นล้นพ้นที่ได้ฝ่าละอองพระบาทเสด็จมาทรงร่วมฟังปาฐกถาในวันนี้นับเป็นพระมหากรุณาธิคุณล้นเกล้าล้นกระหม่อม หลังจากนี้ข้าพระพุทธเจ้าขอพระราชทานพระราชานุญาตกล่าวรายงานเป็นภาษาอังกฤษโดยกล่าวด้วยกระหม่อม Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends. The basis for peace is education and the right to learn, to listen to your heart. This is why the International Peace Foundation works together with major universities and schools to bring some of the best spirits in the world to the kingdom, to build bridges and establish an ongoing cooperation which may contribute to an education reform and to the inclusion of peace programs on topics such as ethics, globalization, information technology, social service, ecology, development studies, human rights, and interfaith dialogue in the curricula of these universities and schools. A reform in which education is not only a platform to learn answers by heart and to merely serve consumerism and materialism, but to find the right questions that guide students, to find a profession which matches their vocation, a profession that corresponds to their individual talents and abilities, which may lead them to a life fulfilled with sense and social responsibility. Answers are not given, they lie within, and the key to find them are the right questions. Knowledge without wisdom leads us to nothing but separation. Theory without practice and intellect without intuition may lead to catastrophic results. Therefore, the International Peace Foundation promotes an intercultural and transdisciplinary approach towards peace and as its basis education, in which representatives of science, politics, economy, culture, religion, the media, and youth find ways of cooperation through which the young generation can get a more inclusive, interconnected, and comprehensive idea of the world in which we live in and which we create constantly anew. Is this the world we want to live in? It's up to us. And it's our choice to start questioning the answers and not merely answering questions. The quest for peace always lies in the questions, not in the answers which have been prepared. Education is a tool to find the treasure within, connect wisdom with knowledge to make this world a better place for all of us. It's not only a tool to cope with change, it's a tool for change. I thank Professor Karan Singh and Chulalongkorn University and all sponsors and partners for our inspiring cooperation in these efforts. I am especially grateful to Dr. Karan Singh, who came to Thailand as a member of the advisory board of the International Peace Foundation to support the events, and I now look forward to his keynote speech and his important contribution to the bridges.
ขอพระราชทานกราบบังคมทูลทราบฝ่าละอองพระบาทข้าพระพุทธเจ้านายทิตินันท์ พงศ์สุทธิรัตน์ขอพระราชทานพระราชานุญาตดำเนินรายการเป็นภาษาอังกฤษควรมีควรแล้วแต่จะทรงพระกรุณาโปรดเกล้าโปรดกระหม่อม Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, English guests, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Karan Singh comes from a diverse and illustrious background. He is a political scientist, an environmentalist, a former cabinet minister, state president, member of parliament, and ambassador. He graduated from Jammu and Kashmir University and took the MA degree of the Delhi University in Political Science in 1957. In 1949, at the tender age of 18, Dr. Singh was appointed regent and the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir by his father on the intervention of Prime Minister Nehru. Dr. Singh was elected president of Jammu and Kashmir for 18 years, then elected to the Lok Sabha, or the lower house of the Indian Parliament, for the Congress Party in 1967, and re-elected ever since. He was appointed cabinet minister by Indira Gandhi and served as Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, then of Health and Family Planning, and subsequently of Education and Culture. Dr. Singh was appointed Indian ambassador to the United States in 1989 and is now Chancellor of the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University. The long list of Dr. Singh's publications includes books on poetry, essays, novels, and autobiography. Karan Singh is a member of the advisory board of the International Peace Foundation. Today, we are grateful to have him here, and he is going to speak about the constructive role religions can play in the promotion of peace. Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, may I present you Dr. Karan Singh.
Your Royal Highness, Princess Martha Christian, Vice Chairman, faculty and students of the Chulalongkorn University, Uwe Morawetz of the International Peace Foundation, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. May I say what a pleasure it is for me to visit the Chulalongkorn University, named after your great king, Rama V. And in fact, he in turn was named after Lord Shiva. Chulalongkorn, Lord Shiva, Chulalankar, the one who wears the crescent moon in his forehead. So there is a deep cultural link. And your dynasty, your Royal Highness Rama, my family also claims to be descended from Lord Rama himself, the Raghuvamsha. And therefore there is a deep empathy, a deep spiritual link between India and Thailand, which I am very happy here to be able to represent. It is a great honor, Your Royal Highness, that you have graced this occasion. I would also like to commend the initiative of the International Peace Foundation and its moving spirit, Uwe Morawetz and his team, who have organized a very impressive array of speakers over a 6-month period from November to April, revolving around the concept of bridges, of linkages, of bridges of friendship and understanding between various religions, between the East and the West, between the science and humanities, between the outer and the inner. Essentially, all of these bridges point towards the culture of peace, which is so important in this era of globalization. I will share with you this afternoon some perceptions on peace, and particularly of the interfaith dialogue as the pathway to peace. Peace and harmony have been sought by humanity ever since the dawn of civilization. And yet the whole of human history, from the very earliest times, is replete with wars and violent conflicts, from the tribal right up to the international level. All religions preach peace, but in fact, religion has been one of the major sources of violent conflict down through the centuries, and remains so even today, despite the worldwide growing interfaith movement. Science was supposed to help establish peace, but it has created increasingly deadly weapons of mass destruction, so that a single nuclear warhead now packs explosive power equal to 1,000 of the bombs that obliterated Hiroshima and Nagasaki over half a century ago. Communism, socialism, capitalism, democracy all claimed the desire to establish peace, but all invariably waged war. Even as I speak, dozens of local and regional conflicts are raging around the world, and thousands perish every month as a result. As against these negative approaches, however, all the great spiritual traditions of the world tell us that there is deep within our consciousness a creative power that, if invoked and nurtured, can bring about a benign transformation in our thoughts and behavior. The lives and teachings of saints and seers from all the great religions of the world bear this out. And though it may be unrealistic to expect such capacities in ordinary people, it does impel us to look deeper into this holistic philosophy of peace in its varied dimensions. I have identified and will place before you 5 dimensions of peace which need our consideration, looked upon not as parallel lines but as concentric circles, beginning and ending with the only 2 irreducible and indivisible units, the individual at the one end and planetary at the inhabit at the other. Let me start with the entity with which we are expected to be most familiar, ourselves. It is a common misconception that just because we are aware of our outer existence, we really know the depths of our own psyche. In the East, it has been accepted for thousands of years that the outer personality is simply an ever-changing and temporary habitation for an inner immortal spark, call it soul or atma or whatever. In India, there has developed over the last 30 centuries an entire science of introspection and inner development, known by the generic term yoga, a psycho-spiritual discipline designed to unite the divinity immanent and the divinity transcendent, of which the outer physical exercises known by that name in the West are barely a small part. With the development of depth psychology in the West, particularly with C.G. Jung, who must be ranked as one of the most creative thinkers of the 20th century, and with the unique heritage of Zen masters in Japan, modern psychology has at last realized that our conscious minds are simply like the surface of an ocean, constantly buffeted by waves and typhoons, harboring in its depths numerous creatures, friendly as well as hostile. The spiritual and mystic traditions of humanity are informed by the belief that there resides deep within us a divine spark which is capable of being fanned into the blazing fire of spiritual realization. As the seer of the Upanishad proclaims, I have seen that great being shining like 1,000 suns beyond the darkness. It is only by knowing this that we can cross the ocean of darkness and death. Vedaham ekam purusham mahantam adityavarnam tamasam parasta tamev vidvati mrityumeti nanyah pantha vidyayeha. This quest constitutes our spiritual challenge as human beings, endowed with an unquenchable thirst for the greater reality pervading our everyday consciousness. This inner spiritual link is the true foundation of the interfaith movement. It binds the entire human race into a single channel, cutting across all barriers of nationality and religion, caste and creed, sex and social status. What the Hindus call Antarik Shakti, Buddhists the Bodhicitta, Chinese the Tao, and Christians the peace that passes understanding, is therefore the first prerequisite in our quest for peace. How we achieve this, whether through Jnana Yoga, the way of study and contemplation, Bhakti Yoga, the way of emotional outpouring towards the personalized manifestation of the divine, Karma Yoga, the way of dedicated works and good deeds, Raja Yoga, the way of internal spiritual practices, meditation and ecstatic gnosis, or a combination of these various paths, will depend on the inner and outer configuration of each individual's life situation. But the point is that the effort has consciously to be made, the effort to come in touch with our deeper personality, with the inner core of our personality. This has consciously to be made. Spiritual progress does not occur automatically without strenuous effort, any more than training for the Olympics can be achieved without prolonged and vigorous physical discipline. That is the first circle of peace, the inner peace which we must find in the depths of our hearts. The second circle in which all of us move is the family, which is the most fundamental social grouping, and despite its widespread erosion in the West, remains the bedrock of society. If our family relationships are full of conflict and struggle, we are unlikely to be able to find inner peace or make any meaningful contribution towards establishing it in society. Family relationships have two basic dimensions: the husband-wife relationship and the parent-children relationship, in both of which tension and strife are becoming increasingly widespread. An important point here revolves around the status of women. In many contemporary societies, this status is still far from satisfactory, and women tend to be relegated to an inferior position. In the West, one sometimes gets the impression that the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction, perhaps to compensate for past injustices. What is needed is a harmonious balance between the two. In the Hindu tradition, we have the remarkable concept of Ardhanarishwara, Lord Shiva and Parvati as half male and half female. This creative fusion is ideally reflected on the social plane in the concept of the wife as Ardhangini, equal sharer and partner in the adventure of life. Thus, neither the traditional Eastern custom of the woman walking 3 paces behind her husband, nor the equally curious Western practice of them walking 3 paces ahead is satisfactory. Walking side by side is symbolically the ideal. With regard to the tension between the generations, one reason it is getting more pronounced is that the pace of change has accelerated, and as a result, there is an increasing psychological gulf between children and their parents. A biological generation remains about 20 years, 25 years. But in these 25 years now, there is so much change that children find it difficult to adjust to the new situation. Here again, the interests of harmony are best served by steering a middle course between parental domination on the one hand and the virtual alienation of children in Western society. Young people today are imbued with great talent. I'm glad to see many young people in the audience today. And there needs to be a continuous intergenerational dialogue so that the creative energies of youth can be harnessed to the quest for a sane and harmonious global society. In this context, peace education must find a place in the curricula of schools and colleges around the world. Peace education, conflict resolution education, these have got to become central to our university system. In our quest for peace, we have to begin with our immediate family, as that is the experimental workshop in which we can learn the virtues of understanding and love, compassion and coordination. It is a microcosm of the larger global society defined in Hindu scriptures as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning the world is a family. This is engraved on the first entrance to our House of Parliament, Ayam Nija Paroveti Gananam Navuchetasam Udar Charitanam Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The word itself is a family. As we move beyond the family circle, we come to the third dimension in our quest for peace, which involves the wider society in which we live. There are many areas here, including religious communities, caste affiliations, linguistic groupings, professional associations, political bodies, and so on. In the present age, we necessarily interact with a wide spectrum of such social groups, and in our interface with each one of them, we have to work towards the peaceful settlement of disputes and the creative interaction of different visions and opposing viewpoints to prevent conflicts from erupting. Each of these areas can contribute to the growth of social cohesion, but are also potentially a source of acute conflict, as we see from our own experience in India and other countries. A purposeful movement towards a more equitable economic order is also essential if the social tensions are not to overwhelm large portions of the planet. Ultimately, a world in which the top 10% appropriate 90% of the world's wealth is not a sustainable target. The rapid changes in technology have brought about a major change in the texture of social intercourse. Gone are the virtually self-sufficient villages or the professional guilds of artisans and craftsmen bound together by their commitment to a common undertaking. Much of modern production tends to be impersonal, and the growth of industrial slums in many parts of the world represent a potent source of social tension and conflict. The growing spectre of the malign underworld of drugs and drug-related violence and the shameful trafficking in human beings represents a grave hurdle in our quest for social peace and harmony. Unless there is a concerted drive to eradicate poverty around the world, these tensions will surely erupt into deadly conflicts that will engulf even the affluent nations. I think it is important to understand that poverty ultimately is unacceptable in a global situation, and that the eradication of poverty has got to be a top priority as we move now into the future. So I've spoken about the inner peace, about the family, about social peace. We come fourthly to the political structure that has played such a predominant role in human history over the last few centuries, the nation state. Although its claim to total sovereignty has become increasingly untenable, the nation state is still the most powerful form of social organization in our present civilization. Here again, its record has been mixed. While it has certainly led to great progress and cohesion, it has also resulted in endless conflicts between nations and between various ethnic, linguistic and political groups within nations. Today we have on the one hand the extraordinary spectacle of nationalism being transcended in the development of the European community, a truly historical event in human history, where nations which were at war with each other for centuries and through their colonial rivalries kept the whole world in a state of turmoil and at last overcome their animosities and are moving rapidly towards a common market, free travel, a common currency and a common fund. I think this is one of the most astounding developments. We all grew up reading history books of the terrible wars that ravaged Europe, between particularly Germany, Great Britain and France, the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the Wars of the Roses, the Napoleonic Wars, the First World War, the Second World War, millions upon millions perished. And today you can travel from Norway to Greece and Poland to Portugal without cost. And when we went last year to Europe, the franc had disappeared, the mark had disappeared, the guilders had disappeared, and actually there is a single currency. I think that is the sort of development which all the other regional groupings will have to move towards if we are able to get over our difficulties. So on the one hand we see the European Union, on the other we have witnessed the disintegration, first of the Soviet Empire and then of Yugoslavia, both of which broke up into their often mutually antagonistic constituent ethnic units, while secessionist movements are creating zones of tension and strife around the world. This dual process of the reassertion of subnationalism and the transcending of nationalism is one that is likely to continue through the 21st century. While the larger threat of the Cold War erupting into a nuclear holocaust has receded, there is enough inflammable material and modern weaponry in Europe and Asia to keep the fires of conflict burning for several decades. Somehow the whole process has to be contained within a larger framework, whether of regional groupings like the European Community, ASEAN, SAARC, or the United Nations itself, which is in urgent need of updating and democratization. The United Nations is a great institution, but unfortunately it is dated. It represents the situation as developed at the end of the Second World War and does not take cognizance of the fact that there are nations with millions upon millions of people who remain unrepresented in the security force. So on the one hand, the democratization of the United Nations is necessary. On the other hand, the strengthening of these regional groupings is also necessary if we are to move towards a conflict-free world. This brings me to the fifth dimension, the quest for world peace. This is now no longer merely a mystical vision or an idealistic utopia. It has become an imperative for the very survival of the human race. The growth of weapons technology has been so awesome that with nuclear weapons we can destroy not only the human race, but all life forms on this planet. Even non-nuclear conflicts like Gulf wars have caused massive casualties and appalling damage to the biosphere and the environment of our planet. It is therefore essential for us to find mechanisms for a peaceful resolution of disputes between nation states. This links directly with the interfaith movement, which can be said to have begun in 1893 with the first Parliament of the World's Religions convened in Chicago, where Swami Vivekananda from India made such an abiding influence. There were 6,000 delegates there in 1893, at the end of the 19th century. During the 20th century, several interfaith organizations have developed, including the International Association for Religious Freedom, the IARF, the World Council of Religions for Peace, the WCRP, the Temple of Understanding, TOU, of which I am chairman worldwide, the United Religious Initiative, URI, and the Chicago Group. There were a whole series of interfaith meetings around the world in the last century. In 1993, the second Parliament of the World's Religions met again in Chicago, exactly 100 years after the first one. In 1999, the third Parliament was held in Cape Town, South Africa. A remarkable event took place in 2000. The Millennium World Peace Summit for Spiritual Religious Leaders in New York was held in the main hall of the United Nations. The fourth Parliament of World Religions is scheduled to be held in Barcelona, Spain in July this year. The interfaith dialogue includes interfaith prayers, round tables, seminars and symposia, and interaction at many levels. At the levels of scholars, at the levels of political leaders, at the level of lay leaders, at the level of students and young people. Exclusivist and monopolistic claims to religious truths must give place to a more balanced and inclusivist approach. While in the 20th century, the interfaith movement did grow, it is not yet a central movement. My hope is that in the same way as the environmental movement moved recently from the periphery to the center of human concern, the interfaith movement will do the same in the years to come. A great deal of work is being done in different various states. Beautiful temples and mosques and gurdwaras and churches and other places of worship are being built. But the interfaith movement as such is yet nobody's doing. Unless the interfaith movement comes center stage, things are not going to fall into place in the global society emerging before our very eyes. The question is not whether we are going to have a global society. The question is what sort of global society we are going to have. Because science and technology are inexorably pushing us towards a global society. Will it be based upon exploitation, negativity, crime, hatred and fanaticism? Or are we going to have a sane and harmonious global society based on interfaith understanding and peaceful conflict resolution? Like the roads in Robert Frost's poem, or indeed in the Kathopanishad, thousands of years earlier, two paths now lie before us. Robert Frost has this marvelous poem. It's called The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it ended the other road. Then took the other, as just as fair and having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there that morning really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, In leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the one for another day. If knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I should be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wooded eye. I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. The two roads open up before us. In the Kathopanishad, they are known as Shreyascha and Preyascha. These two paths lie before us. One could lead to a concerted, multidimensional quest for peace and continuing interfaith dialogue towards a sane and equitable world civilization in which the scarce resources of planet Earth are used to provide the necessary material, intellectual and spiritual inputs for a decent civilized life for all human beings. The other is the path of conflict and disharmony, fundamentalism and fanaticism, which will inevitably result in the destruction of human civilization as we now know it. As the great seer and evolutionary thinker Sri Aurobindo stressed so eloquently in his monumental works, what is needed at this stage of human history is neither a philosophy of total transcendence, which would leave human beings essentially powerless, nor a philosophy of immanence alone, which leaves the world at the mercy of the hostile powers. Rather, the contemporary discussion has to revolve around an integrated, holistic philosophy in which human existence is looked upon as a rare gift to be utilized both for inner development and for the welfare of society and the world. This, in turn, postulates the urgent need for a worldwide, multidimensional interfaith dialogue. The International Peace Foundation deserves kudos for its initiative in promoting a wide-ranging series of dialogues towards the culture of peace here in this beautiful and ancient kingdom of Thailand. Religion has been one of the major civilizational forces in human history. Much that is great and noble, art and architecture, dance and music, literature and moral codes, law and legal structures, can be traced back to one or other of the great religions of the world. At the same time, it is a tragic fact that more people have been killed and tortured, burnt and persecuted in the name of religion than on any other account. And the supreme irony is that each religion looks upon the divine as being compassionate and merciful. This essentially contradictory situation must not be allowed to continue into the nuclear age. It has now to be recognized that all the great religions of the world represent so many different strivings towards the divine, and that in the final analysis, they all represent what the Veda postulates as Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, the wise call it by many names. This acceptance of the multiplicity of paths to the divine lies at the heart of the interfaith movement and of any possibility of growth towards the same society. We may certainly believe and claim that our own path is the most appropriate, but that does not justify our condemning or persecuting those who follow other paths. Let us accept with grace that for every religious belief, there is a majority of humankind which does not accept it. Therefore, discarding fundamentalism and fanaticism that represent obnoxious aberrations of the noble paths of religion, let us adopt a philosophy that accepts multiple paths to the divine, that not only tolerates other religions, but welcomes the plurality of human striving for it. Unless we move conceptually onto a new dimension of interfaith dialogue and harmony, any hope of an integrated human being living in a sane and peaceful society will remain an evasive dream. Let me close, therefore, with one of the most ancient prayers for peace known to humanity. One that has echoed and re-echoed for millions, for millennia, down the corridors of time, from the dawn of Vedic civilization, and is chanted in India even today as it was thousands of years ago in the incomparable glory of the Himalayas. I will read the translation and then I will chant the prayer in Sanskrit. Peaceful be the heaven, peaceful the earth, peaceful the broad space between. Peaceful be for us the running waters, peaceful the planets and earths. Peaceful be all the devas, peaceful be the Brahman, peaceful be the entire universe. May peace and only peace prevail, and may that peace come unto thee. Peace, peace, peace. Jyohu shanti antariksham shanti, prithivi shanti apaha shanti roshadayah shanti, vanaspadayah shanti vishve deva, shanti brahma shanti, sarvaguna shanti, shanti reva shanti, sama shanti devi. Om shanti, shanti, shanti.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. We have approximately 45 minutes for questions and answers, and Dr. Singh has kindly agreed to field questions. If you have questions, you may raise them directly from the floor. We have microphones available, or you may write them down on a piece of paper and pass them forward. The two questions that I've been asked to pose initially now are these. Do you think that Eastern thought, philosophy, and religious beliefs are more consistent with and conducive to a culture of peace?
Yes, I think if you look at it historically, you will find that there was less conflict between what one might call the Indic religions, in other words, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, than the Semitic religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I don't say that there has not been conflict in the East, it has, but I think the intensity of religious conflict that has taken place in the West and with the Semitic religions is definitely more than has taken place in the East. Particularly Buddhism and Jainism have been stressing the importance of peace, and so, as this prayer shows, has been.
Dr. Singh, do you think that a few of the major world religions are fundamentally incompatible? If you think that they are culturally incompatible, how would you explain the seemingly intractable conflicts in the Middle East between Jews and Muslims, or between Hindus and Muslims in Kashmir, for example?
Well, I don't think that these conflicts are intractable. They are certainly very intense. But essentially, this is what the interfaith movement is trying to do. It is trying to bring about a better understanding of different religions. Now, the political dimension will always be there. But if there is a deeper understanding among the religions, then some of these conflicts perhaps can be overcome. Samuel Huntington, of course, has this whole thesis of the clash of civilizations. It's a brilliant thesis, but it is, I hope, it will be proved false. Because if it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, the clash of civilizations, then they are in for a permanent clash. Whereas all that we are trying to do is the reverse of that, to build up a harmonious global society. So to answer the question, I would say that yes, there are intense conflicts in certain parts of the world based upon religion, but that simply means that we have to intensify our efforts to bring about interfaith understanding.
Again, I welcome questions from the audience. You may raise them directly or write them down on a piece of paper. You mentioned Huntington's thesis, Dr. Singh, and his major contention has so far in the past few years has proven more correct than incorrect.
Unfortunately, yes.
You think that he's right after all? That
Well, you see,
the source of major world conflict?
there is a time frame involved. We have to look at it over a certain time. You know the famous story when Chu and I visited France. there was this Andre Magro was the Minister for Culture. And Andre Magro asked Zhou Enlai, what do you think of the French Revolution? He thought for a while and he said, it's too early to say. So in other words, what is the time frame we are looking at? Certainly Huntington in the last 10 years is proving to be very perceptive. But let us hope he doesn't finally prevail. Because as I said, if civilizations are going to clash, and when he says civilizations, more or less he means religions. He doesn't say it in so many words, but if you study his text, he talks of the Hindu, he talks of the Buddhist world, he talks of Confucianism, he talks of Islam, he talks of Judaism, Christianity, Western and Eastern and so on. So he is virtually in effect talking about the clash of religions. Exactly what we are doing in reverse of. So although Huntington seems to have the upper hand at present, let's hope that he doesn't have the upper hand. Again, this reminds me of an amusing limerick. I don't know whether the students know what a limerick is. A limerick is an amusing poem. And it goes like this. God's plan made a hopeful beginning, but man spoiled his chances by sinning. We know that the story will end in God's glory, but at present the other side is winning. So I only hope that Huntington's side doesn't continue to win, and that sooner or later better sense prevail.
How does the interfaith movement explain or try to deal with the problem of religious extremism, especially Wahhabism, for example, and Al-Qaeda?
Yes, in fact, in our discussion yesterday with a group of interfaith activists, this point came up very clearly. It is not only a question of clash between religions, it is a question of different views within the same religion. For example, the Wahhabi view and the Sufi view are both Muslims, but they are poles apart. Similarly, the Vedantic view and the view of the Bajrang Dal or some of the fundamentalist organizations in India are very different. So it is really a two-dimensional exercise. One is between the religions, the other is within the religions. And I think interfaith activists have got to confront fundamentalism within their own religious traditions. As long as they don't do that, they cannot really confront the other religions. So we have to confront the fundamentalists and we have to build bridges between religions at the same time. This is a serious problem in the world.
I have a question from the audience. Excuse me if I'm a bit incoherent here. It's not written very clearly. A New York Times editorial recently suggested that a South Asian Union is possible as a model, inspired by the EU, with Sri Lanka as union territory owned by neither Pakistan nor India. What do you think of this issue?
Well, I would rather not comment in detail upon the Jammu and Kashmir dispute because it's a very complex issue, and recently in the recent SAARC summit in Islamabad there have been some very favorable developments. So windows of opportunity are opening and a process has begun. I don't think it would be advantageous for me particularly to comment on any particular solution. But what I have said is, what I have written about is the possibility of a subcontinental confederation between India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. In fact, SAARC itself would develop on the land of the European Union. You remember in our school books, I don't know about Thailand, we used to read about Alsace-Lorraine. I still don't remember where they are, we have to mark them on the map. And they were the source of endless conflict, I think between Germany and France, if I'm not mistaken. Today, I don't think anybody in Europe cares where Alsace-Lorraine is, or knows where Alsace is, because they've transcended their differences. So it seems to me that if India and Pakistan can transcend their differences, then a lot of the problems that today seem to be intractable will fall into.
The last question had a second part to it. What do you think the Kashmirians would think about that?
Well, I come from Jammu Kashmir myself, and let us see how the situation develops. All I would like to say about Jammu Kashmir at this time, first of all, I'd like to say one thing, that the state founded by my ancestors and ruled by my family for 5 generations is the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which consists of several regions. Kashmir is the only one of the regions. So we use the term Kashmir for the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is misleading. That's one point. Secondly, over the last 55 years, a lot has happened. 2 regions have been under Pakistan control and so on. So I would rather not comment upon what would happen hypothetically, but I would say simply this, that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have suffered very greatly in the last 15 years as a result of this conflict. And everybody in that state, in all the regions of the state, would certainly be striving and hoping and praying for peace and a peaceful resolution.
To what extent do you think that corporate economic interests, and here I take it to mean multinationals, which are elitist, and do you think that they have used religion as a means of creating disharmony for their own personal vested interests?
I must say I don't have any personal knowledge of multinationals using religion for their interests. There may be certain events of that nature, but I am not aware of them. The multinationals are becoming more important. They are beginning to play an important role in this process of globalization. And I think it can be a positive role provided it does not involve a blatant exploitation of the developing world. It has to be done in such a way that the multinationals benefit, but the nations concerned also benefit. It should not be a neo-colonialism in which the old colonial powers are replaced by the multinationals. That is unacceptable. But I am not against multinationals per se. I think they are playing and can play a very significant role in the development of a global economy.
To that, I might add that we have a number of corporate entities who are members of the SBI network, and they are sponsoring this dialogue here. Are religious considerations compatible with capitalism and materialism, consumerism?
Well, capitalism rose because of so-called Protestant ethics. I suppose you could say that there is a linkage. But yes, you see, let me speak of Hinduism, for example. That's the religion I know best. There are 4 goals of life in Hinduism, 4 purusharthas. There is dharma, which is the basis, that is the framework, the ethical and intellectual framework within which our lives are held. Then there is artha and kama. Artha means wealth, kama means sensual enjoyment. They are accepted as part of the gift of life. And then there is moksha at the end, the transcendence. So, Hinduism is not a religion that denies either wealth or sensual enjoyment, provided it is based on dharma and ultimately is transcended in moksha. So I do not think necessarily there is any conflict. Of course, blatant capitalism, meaning unrestrained capitalism, exploitation of labor, trafficking in women and children, the drug trafficking, the arms trafficking, these are all obnoxious elements. You can call them part of capitalism if you like. These of course have to be opposed and suppressed strongly. But legitimate capitalism, in which the resources are used to develop certain areas, I think they are not incompatible with religious values.
You mentioned economic disparity. With regard to the issue of politics, how does the Tibet movement, your organization, intend to address this problem?
The issue of
poverty.
poverty, yes.
And what is your vision, if you have any, on eradicating poverty?
Yes, well, as I said earlier, and I think I said in my speech, the continuation of poverty is unacceptable and unnecessary. We have enough resources now in the world, if they are used with wisdom and compassion and understanding, to ensure for every human being at least the minimum inputs for a decent existence. It is a shame and a disgrace for the human race as such that there is still so much poverty. And here the developing countries, I think, have got to make more efforts. Because as a result of colonial domination for 4 centuries, vast amounts of our wealth was siphoned off to the Western world. Let's not forget, today we say that the Western world is developed and India is a poor country. It was India's wealth that attracted the West, not its poverty. We were among the richest countries in the world. So was Ireland, or we had all the wealth. But they came here, they dominated Asia and Africa for 400 years. They sucked the wealth away. And now they have become the developing country and we have become the poor country. So I think there is no necessary linkage, and I think what we have to do in the developing world is to mobilize our resources in such a way that we catch up. We've done it, Japan has done it, Korea has done it. We are all, Ireland was developing extremely well. It had a setback 3 or 4 years ago, but it's beginning to develop. India is beginning to grow at between 7 to 8% a year. So I think if we are able to get our act together, we should be able to abolish poverty by 2020.
This is the second part of the last question. How can we get companies and governments to focus on poverty eradication?
Governments do focus, at least governments in developing countries do focus on poverty eradication. That is our top priority. If I was asked in India, what is your biggest single undertaking, it is poverty eradication. Poverty eradication means education for all. It means health services for all. It means the possibility of family planning for all. It means decent living accommodation. So poverty eradication involves the basic needs of life: food, water, housing, transportation, education and health and employment. That is what poverty eradication involves in concrete terms. And if we can move towards that, and if international companies can help, if international organizations like the World Health Organization, like UNICEF and others can help, so much the better.
Would you like to back and walk
Thank you. I'm still going through my first one.
to my delight, and now we have a number of questions that I think
Okay, and I will have another glass of water.
What do you think, this is with regard to the situation in France, in recent events in France, what do you think about the solution of the religious conflict in France, that the people who stay in France cannot wear the symbolic costume, like ornaments and masks and veil? Is this the best way to solve the problem?
Personally, I don't think so. I don't think, certainly it would not be acceptable in India. In India, everybody wears some kind of a symbol. And I'm wearing, for example, a bracelet, Om Namah Shivaya, a Hindu bracelet. I think it is a bit extreme to try and ban people from wearing. Of course, it has to be worn discreetly. You can't say, my religion is terrorism, therefore I will wear a Kalashnikov wherever I go. That's not acceptable. But within reason, I think you should be allowed to wear. For example, our Sikhs in India would certainly not accept a situation where you're not allowed to wear the turban. And so for us, we are a very pluralistic society. France, I don't know, I think that they may have to reconsider what they're doing. But this is for schools, is it, or is it for everybody in France?
For everybody in France, I think.
Anyhow, whatever it is, it's difficult.
No, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. I think it's for the school.
Yeah, even there, I think one has to be very, very careful. Because there are certain deeply held religious beliefs, and you don't want to go out there.
This is perceived as Muslim repression. by many Muslims in France.
Yes, they might react in that way. And in India, all Muslim girls go to school, they don't wear the hijab, to the best of my knowledge, very few of them do. But then that's voluntary.
I'd like to expand a little bit on this question. The situation in France is symptomatic of a wider problem that has arisen since September 11th. The prejudices, increasing prejudices and persecution against Muslim interests, Muslim individuals, and this has happened in the United States, in Europe, in many places, and to an extent maybe even China has been accused of that.
Well, let me say this. Certainly, repression is wrong, but it is also true that Muslim fundamentalism has created havoc. I mean, the Al-Qaeda and the jihadi mindset, we have been on the receiving end for the last 15 years. The world only woke up after 9/11. We've been on the receiving end. Thousands of people have been killed in attacks. And so, whereas certainly it is wrong to demonize a particular group or a particular religion, I think that Muslim communities also have got to become more aware of the fact that people are using Islam for blatantly unacceptable purposes. And that cannot be allowed. I mean, India has the second largest Muslim population in the world. We have 125 million Muslims. And so we are a pluralistic society. I myself come from a Muslim majority state. So certainly we mustn't, there should be no unfair victimization. On the other hand, the jihadis must realize that they have done immense damage to the noble edifice of Islam. And I think that they have to, Muslim communities have to look very carefully inward to see why this sort of fundamentalism is developing and what can be done. Partially, of course, it is a result of injustices, economic deprivation and so on. But I don't think anything justifies flying a plane into the World Trade Towers. I think that was a blatant act of totally unacceptable terrorism, which has, as you said, created a very strong reaction, sometimes an overreaction.
Is it a fair assessment or fair perception that Islam is the most controversial world religion? If so, why do you think that?
Well, I don't know. It happens that it is at the center of many of the controversies in the world today. But Islam was at one time a great vehicle, as you know, for development, for wisdom and for knowledge. Much of the knowledge of India, whether it is the so-called Arabic numerals, the really Hindu numerals, medicine, went through the Arab scholars to the West. So it wasn't always like this, but it is true that at present Islam is going through a very difficult period. And some of the reactions in the Islamic community are not conducive towards solving their problems. So yes, I would say it's controversial, but I would say that the Islamic communities are having a lot of difficulty in coping with the situation.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question of the same. This isn't Thai, so I'm going to translate it here. All outcomes have their own reasons. All always have an explanation. In the economic system that is exploitative, repressive, unfair, in the pursuit of corporate interests, if we do everything according to given rules that we don't agree with, that we do not like, that we think are unfair, what else can we do? What are the alternatives? This is a practical question. What interfaith dialogue? What can it suggest as far as managing globalization?
But actually, there isn't really a direct link between the interfaith movement and the corporate world, except that, as you said, many corporate entities are beginning to get interested in the interfaith movement. The interfaith movement deals with the different dimensions of human activity. Lethal corporate activity. Even in the United States, many of the CEOs who were the great heroes were led away in handcuffs. Whether it is Anderson or whether it is Enron or all these companies, some of them, they've turned out to be a bunch of crooks and they've defalcated billions of dollars. So this great sort of, romantic capitalism of CEOs giving billions of dollars, that is no longer acceptable. I think the people of America themselves are realizing that you cannot have these lethal corporate activities who are bleeding the shareholder dry. So the answer to this lies really in an awakening of public opinion, a greater awareness of the rights of the individual shareholder, the individual voter. And the interfaith movement, as I said, can make perhaps a useful contribution by involving some of the corporates in the interfaith dialogue, so that they don't they're not exploiting religion, they're helping to bring about a climate of peace. And in the ultimate analysis, the world also needs peace and stability in order to flourish. Therefore, I think that we can make a small but meaningful contribution towards the development of the
Thank you, Dr. Singh. With that question, I'd like to conclude the questions and answers period. We would like to thank you very much. On behalf of Chulalongkorn University, on behalf of the Faculty of Political Science at Chulalongkorn, we are grateful for your talk. Your talk was holistic, it was eclectic, and I think you would agree that it was very optimistic. I think it is consonant with the culture of peace that the dialogue program and the work of Uwe are trying to promote. We look forward to other dialogues that are coming up. The next one will be on March 3rd by Nicaragua, and March 24th, which will be hosted by the Faculty of Political Science again, both will be in this auditorium. So again, thank you very much, and in appreciation for your talk today, for your optimism, for your vision. Her Royal Highness, the Crown Princess, would like to present you a commemorative gift. Let me say a few things about that. ขอพระราชทานกราบบังคมทูลทราบฝ่าละอองพระบาทข้าพระพุทธเจ้าขอพระราชทานพระราชานุญาตเบิกดร. Karan Singh เข้ารับพระราชทานของที่ระลึกควรมิควรแล้วแต่จะทรงพระกรุณาโปรดเกล้าโปรดกระหม่อมDr. Singh, you mentioned that you also have a gift to present to the Royal Highness.